Ms. Scott, welcome and thanks very much for giving us your time. What kind of metrics would you use to assess the impact of Black Lives Matter, the idea, the philosophy, and the movement? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you as well, and thank you so much for having me. I'm actually honored to be back on the show. I know we talked in 2020 during the uprisings here in Louisville, Kentucky. And for me, part of that matrix, when you look at the impact of a movement like Black Lives Matter, is what difference has it made in people's lives? What has been built? What has changed or transformed? And what are the goals and visions moving forward?
And if that against that measure, I mean, let's look at the successes and the positives. What do you think has been most important? I assume one has to acknowledge it's been part of an ongoing set of incidents. For example, in your own town, the death of Breonna Taylor, black medical worker shot and killed by police officers in March 2020, as you just referred to. So it would have had, I suppose, its own a life of its own. George Floyd would be another example. But as a movement, do you think it still has life and legs?
Definitely. As with most movements, there will be founders, there will be people who start the movement, but it always grows. Once you call people to action, once you say that we need help and support, and that help and support moves nationally and globally, you can't have founder syndrome and think that things are going to stay the way they were when you created the movement. And so we've seen across the United States, Black Lives Matter chapters grow up in all parts of our country and globally across the world. And we've seen more and more people come together and network and connect across our differences and across our similarities to support people running for office, to support getting people into housing, to begin to push out more data and information around police violence and terrorism. So
one of the things that I referred to in my introduction was the way, for example, there have been statements made, often by way of gesture, but sometimes backed up with some change in practice as well, by, for example, major sporting bodies. As an activist of many, many years and probably decades, what do you see as the relationship between gestures and the fear some people have that it might just remain at that level? Well, you know, all our players take the knee, so we're done. I wonder, do we still... Sorry, I lost you for a second. If you could just kick off again from the beginning.
Oh, certainly. So we see with corporations, we see with politicians that there will be posts on websites, and there will be statements and resolutions that say, may not even say Black Lives Matter, but say that we stand for racial justice. It's often a statement. It's words that aren't followed up by action. It's not followed up by supporting Black people running for office, for example. It's not followed up by paying living wages. It's not followed up by holding police accountable, for example, and passing legislation related to police accountability. So, you know, it's still words with the lack of action behind those words.
And midterm elections coming up, where does the agenda that has unfolded in the course of Black Lives Matter and similar initiatives, where does that agenda get a foothold in the political campaigning that I assume is already underway?
Well, we see that foothold in people really holding the feet to the fire of people running for office around abortion access, around police violence and terrorism. And especially when we look at what happened in Uvalde, Texas, and the cowardice of police, we see it embedded in local, state, and federal elections, that people refuse to be silent, they refuse to be fearful, and they are speaking up and demanding that Black lives matter in action and in legislation.
Thank you very much to Attica Scott joining us on 702 Drive. She's a state representative in the state of Kentucky, House District 41, which is located in the city of Louisville. 9 years ago today, for the very first time, somebody posted on social media, someone called Alicia Garza, who became a founder of the movement, the phrase, Black Lives Matter.
News.
Experts.
Analysis.
Where things stand.
What you need to know. Drive Home with John Perlman
on 702.